Okay, so again, to make someone's head spin, this makes it's something that makes someone feel very confused, kind of like they're dizzy, as if they've just been spun around, or like their head is really spinning. Now, if you've ever been spun around or you've been in that kind of situation, you feel like your head is actually spinning around, and that makes it hard to think, hard to concentrate, hard to focus on stuff. So all this idea, okay, it's 7 hours, it's 8 hours, no wait, it's only there 8 hours here but not here, and this country isn't changing. That's going to confuse you.
Right, like how we were even confused about what the time difference was now.
Yeah, between here and the US or the UK, it's confusing. That's why we just look at our phones.
I usually have to use my phone to check.
Right.
On the other hand, many countries don't use daylight savings at all.
Taiwan.
Right. And that phrase, on the other hand, is a phrase we use when we're talking about two different things or ideas. We have two hands, so we say on the one hand and on the other hand. An example might be, on one hand, we could go to Japan for our vacation. But on the other, I've heard Vietnam is a lot of fun to visit.
Okay.
Now, we don't need to start by saying on the one hand. So you'll see someone say, on the other hand, when they didn't talk about a one hand. But we understand that they're comparing two things.
Yeah, it's kind of like another way to say however, or some kind of contrast word like that. Okay, so we see that some countries don't do this daylight savings idea. And the article says this is why you might notice the time difference between Taiwan and the US change between summer and winter. Now, I heard that a lot of the daylight savings things was actually more to do with farmers or something like that in the older days. Because if you move the time an hour like earlier in winter, in autumn, then that means farmers get more daylight to do their work during the day, right?
Right.
Something to do with that?
I think there are some things on a farm that still have to be done at the same time.
Sure.
Because I know that my great-grandfather, for instance, was a dairy farmer. He raised cows.
Oh, okay.
And cows don't have a clock, but they still want to be milked at the same time every day. So you can't tell the cows that there's daylight savings now.
Right, okay. But would it change, maybe it would make it easier for them to get up at night, or I guess if it doesn't change. I always thought it had something to do with farming and the hours that people use when they did a lot of their work, so that what it does mean is things like in the UK, in the summer, it doesn't get dark until, could be like 8, 9, 10 p.m., something like that, which is great in the summer because it's warm and it's nice to be outside and it's light and it's quite pretty.
Right.
On the other hand, it does mean in the winter, you leave work and it's already dark and it's just kind of horrible. So
even in the northern parts of the US, you know, I would get to work and it would be dark and then the sun would come up and then it would go back down. And then I would leave work and it would be dark again. Yeah,
it's terrible. You never get to see the sun, and it's very depressing. Okay, so there we go. That is daylight savings and kind of why they do it. Interestingly, Spain has a sort of odd... They have their time around the same time as bits of Europe do.
Right.
So they end up with these really light, late summers. It doesn't get dark until almost midnight. But it gets dark quite early, and people are still going to work in the dark in the morning.
Right.
So all these different countries have all these different daylight savings times, and it can get very confusing. Hopefully we've helped to explain a bit about what it is and why some countries do it. Let's move on now to today's For You chat question.